In today's episode, I'll be giving my review and reaction to season 3 of the Hulu slash FX show The Bear. So, a little bit late on the review and reaction, so thanks for sticking along. But let's dive right into The Bear, season 3. Do something, man. People are questioning you. Shut up. Shut up. Okay, yep, do that. Sure, guys. Stupid and dumb. Just an idiot. Get your shit together, son. Fuck it. I loved it. Welcome to the DubCast. Coming off season 1 and 2, I had decently high expectations for the show. I think the show hits home a little bit working in a restaurant for a couple of years on my own. I mean, I was a dishwasher, so I wasn't really a waiter or part of the staff like the people at the Bear are, but it was an interesting dynamic when you're stressed for the people working there on the screen and you're not even there. So I think the show has been brilliant. The first 2 seasons were great. This season, I hate when they do the cliffhangers, man, and it's a to be continued. Why are we doing to be continued? It's annoying. I know you could get a season 4 anyway. There's still storylines. I mean, I didn't even know what the storyline was going to be for this season. You have season 1, they kind of redo the beef. Season 2, they kind of build a new restaurant. This season, like, what did we accomplish? There was literally nothing that happened in this season of note besides Natalie having her baby. I'm sorry to say it, like, all of the conflicts coming into this season, all of them are still there. Carmi and Claire, not resolved at all. Carmi and Richie, not resolved at all. Carmi and Sid, not resolved at all. It's like all of our main problems were not resolved at all, really. I mean, we got some answers, but met some new characters. I will say the new characters in this season are good. Ted Flack is awesome. Sammy Flack is also awesome as well. Not sure if he'll be returning. I did like the different chefs coming in and out of Carmi's life, so I did appreciate that aspect of it as well. But overall, I hate to say it, I think this is the worst season of the show. I mean, there are some nice shots and some nice background like stuff going on. They still have some stuff in there, but there wasn't really that one or two episode that really grabbed me. I mean, we'll talk about the teen episode. I think that was my favorite episode this season, but it felt like, we got some more backstory. We did some things, but like we didn't really accomplish much. Like we end on a chef who we barely know's restaurant closing. It's supposed to be like this funeral dinner and whatever. And Carmi, I know, like chases his demons and talks to that chef, but I don't know, man. Like this feels really inconclusive. I'm sure I will give it to them. They do drop a season every year, so I know the episodes are a little bit shorter. So I'm not gonna, try and make other shows do this, but I do appreciate The Bear season 3 and season 2 and season 1 all coming out, and I think this show started in 2023, so or 2022, and then now we have 3 seasons of it. So good job, The Bear. I'm excited for season 4. Maybe we'll actually get some answers, but this season, in my opinion, was the worst season of them yet. So now, with that being said, let's dive into each episode, and I'll give my reactions and takes throughout the episode. So episode 1 is titled Tomorrow. We start this one out with Carmi back to the drawing board. I thought he was going back to his old days, and like after the fight when he was locked in the cooler, he was like, fuck it, I'm going back to New York. But it's actually just the first time he ever went to New York, so he goes to the boat overseas in Copenhagen. He's now in New York City. He seems miserable as always, but this was pre-Bear slash the beef, so it was back in the old days when Carmi was just trying to get his life together, so we see that play out. Claire was still there, and they share a weird look. So very little Claire in this season. I think this is kind of their answer to the people who don't like Claire a lot, because on my beautiful TV Time app, people in the comments do not like Claire. To be honest, it feels a little bit forced, like they're forcing Claire on us. I know. Well, it's one of those situations where everyone wants Sid and Carmi to end up together, and I don't think that's really gonna end. Like, I don't think it's gonna end like that. Could be wrong. They can be good coworkers and not be romantically involved. So I'm okay with the Claire situation. It's just like this show is about a restaurant and cooking. I guess it's kind of like his love gets in the way and stuff. But I'm not gonna say I was like disappointed to not see a lot of Claire. I was excited. I was happy that we didn't see as much Claire. I feel like she kind of takes away from the show, in my opinion. So yeah, I mean, this is one of the only few times we actually will see her, but they share a weird look, and that's really what we're gonna see from her for the next couple episodes. So, as Carmi is making his way in New York City, Copenhagen, he's grinding with the elite chefs. it's weird timeline because I thought he left Sydney and everyone else alone. And I'm also confused on what happened. I guess he had the cooler freak out and then maybe took a couple of days off, but he was just flashing back to his original trip to New York. I don't know. He apologized to someone over what he said. We later learned that was Richie, kind of a half-assed apology over the phone. Like, you got to do it in person. Obviously, Richie feels that same way. So, um, yeah, it was cousin, and Marcus is in the hospital. I must have misremembered this arc of Marcus's mother being in bad health. It kind of rang a bell, but I was like, is he in it for himself? Was he getting self-help? But I believe he was in there at the beginning of this season for his mother, because we learn later on about what happens to her. So as this episode goes on, it's confusing. I still don't know what's happening. Sydney calls Marcus and says she's sorry. I thought this was in relation to something that happened, like maybe Carmi yelled at Marcus, but no, it's Marcus's mother is in the hospital, and that it was a lot. Yeah, Claire looks fucked up. They keep cutting back to Carmi's hand being cut in a combo he had with Natalie. I'm going to call her Natalie. I know her nickname's Sugar, but I just feel like no one really calls her Sugar, so I'm going to call her Natalie. So, yeah, then it's the kind of reveal. This is when he was training beforehand, kind of a duh moment. I guess I was not really following this at all. I mean, it's a beautiful episode with the New York scenery, the different chefs and stuff. I did like this episode, but it was kind of a weird plot line to follow, and I don't want them to become like some complicated ass show, but I mean, maybe I was just not paying that close of attention as I should have been. So we cut to when Mikey ends up taking his own life. He doesn't answer Natalie's phone call when Mikey committed suicide, and he didn't go inside for Mikey's funeral. That's a sad part to watch. I think we kind of knew that already. I could be wrong on that, but yeah, it's tough because, he couldn't bring himself to go in. You can't blame him for that. So that was a tough scene to watch. And then we end the episode off with a younger version of Sydney getting the Carmi dish that inspired her journey into cooking. That's probably my favorite episode, our favorite scene of this episode, to see Carmi get inspired by that and take everything in. And then she is now, Sydney's now going to become a chef. We kind of see her origin story. So I like that aspect of it, of this episode. That's probably my favorite scene. Okay, so I'm bringing back the favorite and least favorite character of each episode. Favorite of this episode goes to Carmi. He just went through a lot this episode. It's hard to, put it into words, but he was dealing with a lot. I mean, we saw him deal with Mikey's suicide. We saw him deal with a chef who was very mean to him. We saw him have to, these cooks, man, these chefs working in a restaurant, I can tell you right now, not an easy job, bro. You're working 12 hours, like 4 times a week. It's a tough job. So I'll give Carmi my favorite for this episode. Spoiler alert for the rest of the review. I don't think he's going to get any more, but least favorite of this episode was the one asshole chef who kept chirping, just being a dick. I mean, I know it's tough love, but some of the stuff he said was kind of mean, so he's getting my least favorite of this episode. Next episode we had was episode 2, seemingly called Next, as I just said next as a transition moving into this episode. So this one's kind of a briefer episode. We have Sydney at the beginning with her dad in the bathroom. I guess her dad likes to get wings that make him just like have to shit a bunch. And she realizes kind of, I got to get out of here. And I don't know how old Sydney's supposed to be. I'm assuming she's probably like mid-20s. So, I mean, Chicago probably isn't a joke to rent a place. So, I mean, we will see her get a place eventually. But living with your parents, it's a new Gen Z thing. I do like how the show is very modern. Like, I think the show is now, season 3 was in 2023, and they like include COVID and stuff, so I do like that aspect. It does feel real, like this could just be happening in Chicago right now. So that's one of my favorite parts of this TV show as well. Anyways, so Sydney's got to move out. Natalie questions Carmi's new list of non-negotiables. I'm forgetting if you drew this up in episode 1 or in this episode, and his mental state also. And Carmi has decided to quit smoking and goes with the gum. Now, I really like this decision from Carmi. Working in a kitchen, I understand when people have to step outside and take a hit of their vape or take a hit of their cigarette, but to be able to kick that habit, and also, like, I feel like that lessens your stress if you're chewing gum every time and not having to go outside. It could increase your productivity. So I think this is a really good decision from Carmi. I'm proud of him. And through the last episode of the season, he's still off that. I feel like they could just throw him back on a cig next season just to be like sad about it. But proud of Carmi for now for quitting cigs. Not the easiest task. There's people with addictive personalities. Good for him. So he is now changing everything every day. He's changing the menu every day, much to the chagrin of Cousin, Richie, and Sydney, and basically everyone in the restaurant. But Carmi has final say, so he's like, we're changing the menu every day. He wants to prove something to them. I don't know who them is. Maybe it's like the review people or the chefs back in his day. But I think really all Carmi wants, I mean, he'll talk about legacy in a later episode, but I think he just wants to be remembered as a great chef and have a crazy restaurant. Like, that's what he wants to be remembered by. And we see that kind of inspire most of his actions throughout this season. So moving on, we have the Richie and Carmi problem still prevailing after the ending of last season. Carmi, obviously locked in the cooler, was pissed off at the world, said some mean things to Claire, said some mean things to Cousin. Controversy breaks out after Richie brings up what specifically he said to Claire, which was that his job was, that Claire and the relationship was all for nothing. I mean, that's a simplistic view of everything. Kind of reminds me of my review of Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind, where I kind of talked about this issue. Like, you need the love and the pain to experience things. Like, I disagree with Carmi in this moment, and obviously it's a hot-headed temper moment where he's spewing. But come on, bro, you gotta chill out. So I'm Team Cousin, I'm Team Richie, which is crazy to say because coming off season 1, no one really liked Richie. But anyways, Marcus returns in the middle of this fight between everyone, and everyone gets back to work. He doesn't want to talk about his mother passing away, which is very respectable. I feel like I wouldn't want to talk about that day. They really just keep moving and act like everything's normal. He asks Carmi to take us there, and that means to the promised land. And that's what Carmi does best, man. So we'll see if they're able to do it in season 4, because we don't really get answers to anything in season 3. So favorite of this episode goes to Sydney. She was trying to actually rationalize shit and get everything done. She doesn't have beef with everyone. She just wants to, like, make food and make a good restaurant, get things accomplished. You know, every time she has to talk to Carmi, she has to talk him down, so it's kind of annoying. Least favorite, one of the many he'll get this season, is Carmi. I know he's a cooking legend and a great chef, but bro, he has to chill out and at least pretend to listen to other people's problems. Like, he has no empathy whatsoever. He just does whatever he wants. So that'll end us off on episode 2. Continuing on, we had episode 3, titled Doors. So we start this one out at Marcus' mother's funeral. He talks about enjoying cooking with her and their communication back and forth. So a nice moment for Marcus there, who kind of takes a back seat in this season a bit from where we saw him last season, but he's still there, obviously going through some stuff. So Carmi is now at the restaurant being very specific about certain dishes. Yeah, I mean, this is just the spiral of Carmi from here on out. But he's not happy with specifically Tina, I think, is screwing up dishes, and, you know, he wants everything to be perfect. He's a perfectionist. That's why this whole show is a conundrum, because you have Carmi dealing with all this stuff when he could just let things slide a little bit. I think it'd be okay. But, you know, perfection. He asked him to take him there. Marcus asked him to take him there. He's going to do what he can to do that. So we have Fack, who I think the Fack brothers are literally the soul of this season. This was the Fack season. So our original Fack brother just pours the broth in front of the customer and brings it back to the kitchen. So, like, here, you got to go do this broth. And then he's like, okay. And then he brings it to him, just pours it in front of him, and then brings it back to the kitchen. They're like, dude, you have to go and, like, actually give it to them. He just took it back into the kitchen. That was one of the funnier moments of the season. Yeah, I mean, this guy can't be trusted to do anything, right? If he can't even deliver a broth to a table. So we'll see if Fack ends up developing further and being able to actually help with the restaurant. I mean, he does a lot of maintenance stuff, but so Richie has come up with an innovation, asking the customers staying too long. So there's a table that's staying too long. Richie, with his new idea on service, asks them if they want to see the kitchen. So then when they get up, they clear their table and they're able to do that. There's a lot of back and forth this season about how they can fix the budget. I mean, I know it can't be perfect because we're not going to get to season 4. So one of their big problems is people are staying too long at reservations. Richie's able to solve that problem temporarily, but it's going to be needed to be fixed further on. So Richie and Carm once again are back and forth, almost reaching a breaking point in the kitchen once again. This during service time too, so just completely collapsing. And also, as the two leaders of the front of the house and the back of the house, That and causes everyone else to just spiral about one of their own things. I mean, everyone has something going on at the end of this episode, so it's just absurd. The bear is in chaos. So favorite of this episode, I'm giving it to Sydney. Once again, controlling chaos, being calm under pressure, rationalizing with Carmi. Least favorite, once again, is going to Carmi. I like everyone in the show, so it's always tough to pick a least favorite. But he is in his own head, Carmi, and his perfectionism is not going great as of this episode. I know he probably will lead them to the promised land eventually, but I feel like it could be done with a better attitude, in my opinion. I mean, he got all mad with that one chef, but is he that dissimilar? I don't know. So episode 4 is titled Violet. Carmi and Claire. This starts off with a Carmi and Claire conversation. His least favorite day of the week is the one where he doesn't have to work. That's one passionate motherfucker, bro. Because if you ask 95% of people, their favorite day is the weekend when they don't have to work, or the days they don't have to work when they're off. I mean, that's just simple, like, human basic ways. Like, I don't know. So, I mean, clearly Carmi's life has just been set up to be a cook. That's the only thing he wants to do. Claire, in return, tells a sad story about a girl who got hurt on the 4th of July. Kind of a sad story for her to tell. I'm sure there was some significant symbolism in there, but I don't know. This episode was a little bit sleepy to me. So Richie and his daughter are back, now split, but they do have good chemistry, so this is always cute to see Richie and his daughter. He now talks to his ex's new man, who is Josh Harnett, about not giving a heads up to marry her. Josh Harnett, I believe his name is Adam in the show. Maybe that's wrong. But he feels bad about not giving Richie the heads up. But, I mean, you don't really have to do that, in my opinion. Though their relationship is over, you don't really owe that to him. I mean, I guess he's trying to be friends with Richie, so it's a weird back and forth, and Richie likes the guy too, so I think it's the best case scenario. They'll talk about their wedding in the next couple of episodes, but Richie, I don't think he's doing the best with the situation. I think he loves his daughter, and I think he wishes he could stay with his original wife, but, things happen, times move on. So, once again, we have a major communication issue between Carmi and Richie. It's still bad, and a major point that a chef points out to Sydney. So Sydney's stopped on the street by another chef, which becomes basically a major plot line in the latter half of the season. But this chef is like, we could hear Carmi and Richie yelling at each other in the kitchen. So that's like the one bad thing that the chef noticed about that restaurant. So we got to fix this tension, guys. Like, seriously. And they won't. But so this episode ends. They're being reviewed. The critics have already been to the restaurant. They don't know what they will say. And that's our cliffhanger for episode 4, and we won't find the results of this until I believe the last episode of the season. So, yeah, there's your review. But favorite of this episode, I'm giving it to Richie. Fell for him with his daughter, and just having picked Richie yet, Richie's one of my favorite characters, so I'm giving him the nod here for favorite. Least favorite is going to Carmi. Bad communication with Richie once again, and remaining stubborn in the kitchen once again. So that's episode 4. Let's move on to episode 5, titled Children. So this one starts off with Natalie having demons to start the episode. She's, about to give birth, so a lot of stuff is coming up for her. She's worried about how she'll be as a mother, kind of asking people around. Things are happening around her, she's having visions and stuff. Marcus and Sydney share a moment after moving stuff out of his mom's place. Still an awkward dynamic there because Marcus is romantically interested in Sydney, and Sydney is not really romantically involved with Marcus. We will talk about a potential love interest for Sydney on the last episode of the season, which I'll have an opinion on that. But for now, Marcus and Sydney, once again, I don't think needs to happen. Like, I don't think it should. I think life is more realistic than it's just like, oh, we work together, I like you, and so I have to. She has to like him back. Like, Sydney clearly is looking for somebody more stable than both of them. I mean, Marcus maybe could be a good fit. I don't know. I like Marcus and Sydney better than Sydney and Carmi, in my opinion. Don't kill me for that. So this is where you get the big news. Carmi's role model, Andrea Terry, is closing her restaurant. Everyone acting like this is a funeral seems a bit dramatic. Now, I did mention my years in restaurant business, but as a dishwasher, we don't really understand this stuff. So is it always like this for the top chefs? Like, you have a funeral and it's like this whole big to-do? Feels a little bit overdone in my opinion, but I know there's people out there who are food buffs and chef buffs, so let me know if that's a thing, because I feel like this was all a little bit too much dramatics, and it's just a restaurant closing. I don't know. Yeah, I still think that's overblown. Anyways, John Cena has arrived. He works with the facts. Funny back and forth. His name is Sammy. So he's a nice little go between the facts and the people who work at the Bear because he's slightly more intelligent than the other two facts, but isn't, he has his issues as well. So while all this is happening, we haven't talked about Jimmy yet. Jimmy's been worried about the restaurant losing money. That's kind of his shtick every season is he has an investment in the space, so he needs it to make money, and he always threatens to pull it, but never does. So this time, now he's losing money every month. He pulls in the computer here to help them make money, and the computer is not just a regular laptop computer, it is a man. I want this man in my life, the computer. He just figures everything out and figures out how to save costs. So he makes a lot of good points to Jimmy and also Carmi and Sydney, and everyone's there listening. Um, they shouldn't have a phone, he says. They shouldn't have the chargers, which chargers are stupid. I set those up at weddings. I don't really understand the point of that if you're not going to put food on it. But so I agree with him there. And then he also recommends to Natalie at the end of the episode to recommend firing Marcus. And I don't know if this plot point will come up again, but Marcus only makes 2 or 3 dishes a night. They think he's replaceable. But Natalie immediately says no, and that's a good sign in their chemistry and the dynamic they have going there, that would not happen. I trust that wouldn't happen, but maybe it comes up again in the next season. Finally, we have Sydney. One of the other main running themes of the season, there was an agreement put out between Jimmy, Carmi, and Sydney to sign the agreement to all be together and work together as a business. Not sure if it's an LLC, if it's a partnership. There's different types. Business school right there. I don't know what type of partnership it is. I mean, we don't really see it, much of it, but everyone kind of asked her to sign the agreement to be a co-owner, and this episode at the end, she faces pressure from Jimmy, and yeah, I mean, that's going to be a running theme throughout. So favorite of this episode, I'm giving to Sammy. Provided a fun back and forth dynamic with Ted during the episode. I appreciated John Cena in this role. Least favorite going to Jimmy, pressuring Sydney to sign the agreement and also brings in the computer, which is a stressor to all. I know Jimmy has to make his end too, but I feel like he's a little bit over dramatic about it because he's never actually going to pull the money because it's a family business. So, least favorite going to Jimmy. Episode 6 is titled Napkins. Now, this is my favorite episode of the season. It follows Tina. It's an only Tina episode, and I think these episodes that follow only one thing are the strongest that stick out in my mind. Richie's episode from season 2, the family dinner from season 2. I'm sure there's more that I'm missing, but I feel like when it's only Marcus's episode in season 2, I believe that was season 2 when he's on the boat in Copenhagen. I believe these one focus episodes are great and make the show great. So this is my favorite episode, Napkins. Anyways, it's with Tina. She gets fired at her position doing payroll and data entry for a candy company. Kind of we're laying off these people. You're not useful anymore. And she's got to go, which was sad to see that happen, but also probably happens a lot to people in real life. She tries to apply for a lot of different jobs with no luck, doing the same thing every day. And yeah, I mean, before I had my job that I have now, I was doing that same thing. You wake up and it's like, I have to apply to jobs today. And it's just the same old cycle. Like it feels, people always say they don't have work. When you don't have work and you don't have money, it's not an easy life, man. So I fell for Tina in that spot. The position gets filled that she was going to interview with, so she gets angry with the young secretary, rightfully so. I mean, this kid is just a kid. Like, he's just telling her what is actually true, but after you see all the pent-up aggression and everything that Tina has to go through, you feel for it, and you're like, this guy couldn't provide an extra thing or something, and they'll do it. I had an interview that was scheduled at 3, canceled at 2:57. Like, this is realistic stuff. It's sad. It's especially in 2025. I think this episode stands the test of time, even though it only came out like a year ago or 8 months ago. Anyways, so that was sad to see. She makes her way into the beef and gets a free sandwich. I mean, this was the old beef when Mikey was around, and they were just kind of screwing around at the counter. You see Richie is one of the people there, and then people don't want the sandwich, whatever, just give it to Tina for free. She sits in the back, starts breaking down, crying. Sad scene. Everything is hitting her all at once. But Mikey and Richie are in the back, and then Mikey sends him to go do something out, talks to her, sees her crying, and they share their issues in between them. He shows her the picture that Carmi sent to him in episode 1 of a plate dish. He's like, my brother's talented, whatever. So that was cool to see that come up again. And then Tina talks about how maybe she lost some fire with herself when she sees the younger kids applying for jobs. I mean, that's a real issue too. People like always say, you young kids with the typing and technology, it's going to be the same thing for me when in like 20 years, I'm going to be behind in technology unless I keep up, you know? So stay up on your tech courses and your technology. Yeah, so that's where we end out. She gets a job at the Beef, starts going there, and then obviously now she's like the sous chef at the Beef, so that's awesome. Or the Bear, sorry. So that's awesome. Yeah, good job, Tina. Great episode. So favorite character of this episode goes to Tina. Now we understand her struggle, why she was a little bit bitter at the beginning towards Carmen. You know, she had a really strong loyalty to Mikey, because he gave her an opportunity when no one else would. Least favorite. Not really a lot to choose from this episode, so I'm going to the one manager who said they weren't hiring, then proceeded to try and get her to buy things there, like check things out. Come on. That was stupid. Episode 7 is titled Legacy. So Sydney meeting once again with that chef who stopped her on the subway. She's offered a position with that guy. He's starting a new restaurant. He worked at Andrea Terry's restaurant, so now that she's trying to do a new ownership group with Sydney. And yeah, this is an interesting dynamic because it's kind of like a greener grass scenario, because you have Sydney who's dealing with Carmi every day. It's like, if I just had to deal with this guy every day, it would be way better, right? Like, in the moment you're struggling, but then maybe that's where I'm thinking season 4 is going. She's going to leave, and then she's going to be like, oh, it's going to be better, but it's actually worse. And Carmi's like, perfectionism makes everything perfect. She's going to come back to Carmi. That's my prediction for season 4, right after remembering that this happened. Anyways, so the old guard is here to help fix the sandwich window at the restaurant, which I don't understand. Do they just run like the sandwich window for lunch hour and then they do dinner service? I think that's what they do, but they still have the window operational, and the old people from the original Beef are here to help, and they help Ibrahim, who also takes a major back seat in this season, but it works much better with them helping, and that was good to see for Ibrahim because he was struggling to keep up with all the orders. I believe in one of the episodes it's very sloppy. So Natalie is still waiting for the baby, asks Richie about what happened when his ex-wife gave birth and went into labor, and Tina also tells her story about after she gave birth. So nice to have this supportive environment for Natalie moving forward. Well, until it actually happens, but we'll get into that. Natalie now is, after hearing all this great stuff, applies pressure to Sydney to sign the agreement. Everyone's applying pressure to Sydney, bro. Like, if she wanted to sign it, she would have signed it. Like, I don't know what the deadline is or something. There must be some sort of business deadline that they need her to sign the agreement by, because everyone keeps pressuring her. But I mean, I feel like this season was a slow lead up to see why Sydney's gonna eventually leave next season. Just my prediction once again. So, going off that same cue, Sydney tries to make recommendations to Carmi about the menu for tomorrow, and he doesn't listen at all to any of them, of course. So once again, she doesn't have creative input. You can see her easily walking out the door. And then at the end of this episode, it looks like Natalie is going into labor, but it is true, because next episode we will spend a lot of time with Natalie. So, favorite of this episode, I'm giving to Natalie. Besides her rude comment to Sydney about the agreement, she had some nice moments and will likely welcome in a child next episode. Least favorite, once again, going to Carmi, dismissing Sydney at the end of the episode per usual, and probably will encourage her to leave, and, you know, he doesn't even see it happening because he's so caught up in his own world. Bad attitude once again, so least favorite goes to Carmi. Sorry, not sorry. Episode 8 is titled Ice Chips. So we pick right up with Natalie after she goes into labor. She's calling everyone, panicking on the highway as she is about to go into labor. She calls her mother. Disaster choice right away. I mean, I don't know how none of those people picked up. Well, we understand why the people in the restaurant didn't pick up, because they all have to put their phones in the locker. But there was another call made, which I will mention at my least favorite, on why it's such a dumb least favorite, but there was no one else to pick from. Anyways, the mother right away is being super annoying, telling her to breathe, like in the parking lot. But the mother, like, she low-key has some points. Donna low-key be preaching throughout. I mean, she had 3 kids. We learned about how each of the births were, but she was low-key preaching on some points. So as time continues, Natalie's able to be in the bed, ready to have the baby. Donna is rambling about her stories. She had to walk to the hospital to have Mikey and go upside down to have Carmi. And then once Natalie keeps getting the waves of labor or whatever they're called, I'm sorry, I'm not an expert. She starts using her breathing techniques, which are just going like he, which they said he. I wonder how many times they said he this episode, probably like 50. So yeah, and while they're in this room, they hear there's a baby crashing in another room, and they hear the screaming. So that's got to be not great to hear when you're in the hospital. I feel like they should kind of, I don't know, the doctor was a little bit slimy with that, because you should like turn off his radio when you're a prospective mother. But I guess everything is realistic, whatever. Thought that was, I don't know, kind of weird to have happen in the room. Essentially, things keep happening. No one's able to really show up, but Donna and Natalie are able to set aside their differences for now. I believe in season 2 at the dinner episode, Natalie is furious with her mother. She wouldn't speak to her. Obviously, then she crashes through the house, which... Why does this lady still have her license? Does she have Alzheimer's or something? I mean, not to be disrespectful at all, but like, that gave like dementia or Alzheimer's in that episode of her driving through the house. How was she able to drive there on her own? That's a little bit concerning, just personally, but obviously nothing comes of it. Anyways, back to the heart-to-heart. Donna is trying to put all of the bad stuff to the side because she figured Natalie didn't want her around, which was true at the time. Natalie mentions to Donna how all of the kids are scared of her, including Carmi and Mikey. I believe we saw that play out too. Well, now that I'm thinking about it on the dinner scene, that would happen even longer ago because Mikey was there throwing the spoons when she drove through the house. So she must have like got that issue fixed, or she's taking medication or something that they trust her to drive on the road. So finally, at the end, Pete finally makes it. Thank God. I mean, I was just kind of over the Donna Natalie storyline, to be honest. It felt like that went on a little bit too long. Donna did do a good job, though, calming her down, being the nice mother figure to the new mother in Natalie. She gives Pete advice on what to do. He's like, what do I do? And she's like, you got to just be there for her. So W Donna. By the end of this episode, I feel like this episode, I don't know how people are rating it, but I feel like this was kind of their attempt to do like a crazy, like one of the last episodes where, and I mentioned before, like the Richie episode, or even the teen episode, or the family dinner episode, but this kind of fell flat of that. I mean, it was just like a weird, we're having a kid. I mean, the ice chip stuff, cool. I don't know. I just thought this maybe be a little bit overrated by people. So favorite of this episode, I'm going to Natalie, going through it all and has a tough time talking to her mother, but she's better for it, learns a lot, listens by the end of it, fixes her relationship with her mother. You know, she ends her stubbornism, which was warranted. So good job, Natalie. Favorite for this episode, 2 in a row. Least favorite, I'm going Claire. Hard to choose one, so I'll share it between everyone for not having their phones on. Oh wait, they have theirs locked away in a restaurant. Where were you, Claire? Where were you? You're a nurse. God. Claire is non-existent in this season, boy, because she can't even pick up the phone. I mean, if your ex's sister's calling you, like, that's a weird phone call. That could mean anything. I don't know. Maybe you pick up the phone, Claire. I know nurses work weird shifts, so hopefully she called her back, but there's no one else to choose from. We're not going to pick Donna. Donna was a W in this episode. I like Donna. So yeah, that'll do it for episode 8. Episode 9 is titled Apologies. So once again, the intensity continues from Carmen having his memories of the past chef experiences, and the review is now leaving tension between him, Sydney, and Richie. They all don't know how it's going to go, so they're kind of panicking in their own way, which leads them to take it out on each other, that type of thing happening. So Carm asks Sydney to come to Ever, the funeral dinner where Andrea Terry will have her last dinner, but with her new potential job there, it's awkward. Obviously, she's going to be working with one of the chefs from Ever, so it's kind of would be a weird dynamic of her showing up, but she agrees to go anyways. I mean, this has got to be a dream for her, going to see like all her idols and shoot the shit at the last dinner, which they do, but that's next episode. So Carmi has a moment in the walk-in cooler, potentially thinking about apologizing to Claire, but does not go through with it. I mean, we're 9 episodes in, and this dude hasn't even like made an effort at all to apologize to Claire. Just set it off for season 4, and then we'll figure out what happens there. So Jimmy pressures Carmi about the review and says he'll cut the string on the restaurant if it's bad, and then he also tells him his mom wants to call him. The computer wanted him to say more to him, so the computer is seemingly a new villain in the show where he's just going to try and make everything bad for Carmi and the gang, but it's like he has points. But I thought, no, actually, I thought this was all kind of BS. Because once again, Jimmy's pulling the thing of saying, if it fails, I'm pulling the string and I'm getting rid of it. Okay, dude, then do it. You've been saying that for 3 seasons. No, he's not doing it. It's a family business. I just don't think that's ever going to happen. But it's always going to be like the back thread of it happening. So yeah, computer's still involved. I want to see more computer next season. I fuck with the Vision Raiders hat. Let's see what happens. Richie has a convo with his ex-wife. They're still on good terms, which is good to see. Like talking terms. They go to the park together. She wants him to go to the new wedding, and they're both happy about each other's parenting, the way they're raising the kid on their own. So that's really good because I know in a lot of families that split, the mother worries about what the dad's teaching her, and Richie, I mean, himself worries about what she's saying to his daughter because she's told him he's alone. So at the end of the day, they're both happy, which is good. Sydney drops off food for Natalie and Pete with the new baby. Nice gesture. I mean, Sydney, I think, is the best character in the show just because she's the most wholesome, most kind-hearted person, in my opinion, in very contrast to how Carmi acts sometimes. So the facts visit Claire, and she's semi-receptive to the message, but also, like, get out of my job. She works in a hospital, so understandable. And it's weird when the facts just go and apologize on Carmi's behalf when it doesn't really seem like Carmi's ready to do that yet. So kind of a weird thing to do there from the facts, but they're kind of a weird bunch, as we know. So Claire is here in episode 9, and we definitely will see her in episode 10, right? I'm trying to, there's legit 2 episodes she was in this season, which is crazy. I think they're taking the opinions of people online too seriously because, yeah. So favorite of this episode, I'm giving to Sydney. Just a good vibe in this episode. I don't know, she was being super nice to Nat and Pete, and she's worried about breaking Carmi's heart. So she does have some sense of like empathy, which I know is kind of gone in our main character. Least favorite of this episode, going to Jimmy. Seems like every episode he's reminding Carmi that he's going to have to pull the string eventually. Did have a nice moment of saying he wishes he'd done it more raising the kids. Like, that was cool, but like, I don't know. You just can't throw that in there after giving the bombs to start. So least favorite is Jimmy, once again. Now, our last episode of the season is titled Forever. Episode 10, Forever. Last dinner ever. Richie and Luca are back talking to other chefs. Luca is Will Pollard, I forget his name. He's been a cameo here and there, but I feel like this is the season he's been the most active in. Richie is back where he learned all of his service experience. So this is where he had his napkins episode, or not napkins. Well, technically his napkins episode. It was called Forks, or no, it was. I forget what Richie's episode was called because I think Forks was the one where Mikey was throwing the forks. Anyways, Richie's main episode last season where he had that crazy learning experience at him doing service. He wants to hang with them while the service happens. He doesn't want to sit at the table with the chefs. I agree. I think that the table with the chefs, that conversation was really boring in my opinion. But speaking of that, we have Sydney and Carmi showing up there. So Sydney's fitting right in, telling stories. Everyone's telling stories about cooking stuff. And to be honest, I really couldn't care about any of this. Just seemed kind of boring fodder to move the episode along. And while all this is happening, Carmi keeps staring at the old chef who kept giving him trouble and giving him problems at that one restaurant. He was strict on him. He's not even sitting at the same table, mind you. He's sitting at a table over. But that's where Carmi spends most of his attention this episode. And now he's going to go confront him after he gets up to go to the bathroom. So he finally gets this confrontation he's wanted for years. It's been in his mind playing over and over again. We've seen it play over and over again, where he has a very one-sided conversation, in my opinion, and a reality check. Carmi got owned by this dude. Like, I'm sorry. And I know it's bad what happened. It was kind of like a frat hazing thing, what the chef was doing to him, but it worked. Like, I think it deadass worked because, I mean, you saw... Like, he kind of needed the mix of everyone. You saw Andrea Terry, the guy who's like listen to the music. Like, it was all different styles. You got to get the different styles, get your style down. And I think of all the people he emulates the most, I believe it's this guy. Like, he doesn't listen to anybody, says everything has to be perfect. Like, I mean, he doesn't call people out and make personal attacks like this guy did, but I don't know. I feel like he most embodies this chef. And he's left crying. He kind of got cooked in this conversation, but I think it's kind of like that thing you think of, like, if I ever see this guy again, I'm going to give it to him, you know? You see him, and then it's not all that it's out to be. And then that's where Carmi's left kind of reflecting on himself. Like, I overhyped this in my head. He doesn't even know who I am. Or he knows who he is, but he's like kind of, what's the term I'm looking for? Anyways, I can't think of it. Lil Bros him. I think that's what I was going for. The chef kind of Lil Bros Carmi. So that was a tough scene for Carmi, to be honest. While all this is happening, Luca and Sydney make their way to the back of the kitchen, where it seems like there's some sort of flirting dynamic going on there between them, which that's the romance I've mentioned early on. I think maybe they're going to put Luca in the show as like a main character next season. That's my opinion, because I feel like every season they kind of add a couple people, and he's been around, so it wouldn't be like a weird ad. Maybe he works at the new Ever restaurant with her and the other guy. I could see this happening where it's like we get together, but then they like agree to amicably split ways. Like he's kind of like the first boss of like Sydney's love interest, and then she makes her way to either Marcus or Carmi. Is season 4 gonna be the last season? I feel like we're kind of running out of ideas here. I mean, but there's a lot to answer, so keep going. I feel like The Bear, though, like once it's over, like in 10 years from now, are we gonna be like, I'm glad we had 7 seasons of The Bear? Like this should be a 4 or 5 season show. Anyways, not sure how I feel about that romance between those two. Both young, both happy people. Let's make it work. I'm down for it. I don't think it'll last, though, if they do get together. So Adam pulls Sydney to the side. He's still working at Ever, obviously, last dinner, but everything's kind of cleared out. He's like, hey, are you going to take this job or not? Because I like need to get going on doing things. And she just gives him like the most like, oh, I need to talk to Carmi and I need to like get everything figured out and blah, blah, blah. She hasn't thought about it at all. I mean, she's thought about it. It's been killing her to think about it, but she hasn't made a decision at all. Yeah, so she's very undecided. So they have a party afterwards at Sydney's new place. Where is Carmi during this? He doesn't go to the party. I know he doesn't smoke cigarettes anymore, but he can't hang out with his coworkers. That's how you build camaraderie. Richie seemingly has found a new love interest himself. Jess, the woman who worked at Ever as the service person there, so good job for Richie. Hopefully they get together. I mean, that could be a good relationship. I don't really know much about Jess, but at this party is Andrea, and did Andrea know Sydney? Who does she even know at this thing? I mean, she knows her people, Jess and the other guy. I don't even know if I forget what his name is, the guy who originally worked at Ever and was like Richie's mentor. I don't know if he was even at this party, but it's like, who does she know here? She's doing Salt Bae and making pizza and waffles. Like, that was a funny scene where Sydney only having pizza and waffles. And so, of course, Andrea Terry just goes like beast mode on it. But who does she know at this party? I thought that was weird that she would pop out. But Sydney needs to take a moment to go outside, and she has a panic attack about her situation. Unfortunate for Blood. Feel bad for Sydney. She's going to be in a hard place deciding. I do think she will go against Carmi, though, to start and then go back to him. Just my review, just my opinion. And so the last thing of season 3 is the review comes in with seemingly mixed reviews. Carmi hits a motherfucker, and then the cliffhanger to be continued. Bruh, I hate the to be continued, especially we just had 10 episodes. You couldn't give us a review, like whatever. That kind of pissed me off, honestly, this season. Felt like not a lot accomplished. That's my biggest review of the season. It was a solid season of television. Like, I'm not saying it was bad. It was just not my favorite season of The Bear. I think season 2 of The Bear is the best, in my opinion. Then season 1, then season 3. What do you guys think? Where do you rank it? Let me know. Anyways, we still need a favorite and least favorite of this episode. So favorite of this episode, I'm going to Carmi. He finally confronts his demons. Respect him for doing it. He did get owned, but I think he maybe will be get better off having gone through this experience this season. Just cumulatively, like, I gave him a lot of least favorites. I think this, if anything, for Carmi was learning experience. Hopefully he learns that he needs to be more receptive to ideas, less controlling. I don't know, but I do think Sydney will leave. Least favorite, Luca. Just tough to pick one, as once again there aren't really a lot of characters in this show I don't like, but he was a bit annoying in my opinion, and his plot wasn't really going anywhere and it just felt kind of meaningless. So least favorite going to Luca this episode. Okay, so there's The Bear season 3, 8 months after it comes out, but you know, now we're caught up. Now we'll do The Bear live next time. Hopefully. I don't know. It's season 4. It seems like it comes out in the summer. So maybe in a couple months we'll be reviewing The Bear season 4. Let me know what you guys thought about The Bear season 3. Strong season. You know, they do, not strong, I wouldn't say strong, but good season. They do their thing once again, but it just felt like after season 2, this was a bit of a drop down. Also, not a lot of stuff happening plot-wise. I know it's not really a show that needs to have that. Like, the one-off episodes are great, but I feel like they kind of fell short in those one-off episodes besides the teen episode. And that was my favorite episode of the season. What was your guys' favorite episode of the season? Let me know down below in the comments. If you're new here, we got TV show reviews, we got movie reviews, sports talk every week. Try and post 3 or 4 pods a week, so stay subscribed, turn on the bell to get your notifications. Videos I drop are usually at 7 a.m. unless I forget to do it or there's a stream. So yeah, pretty consistent schedule. We got movie reviews coming up, TV show stuff. I don't know if I'm going to podcast about Mandalorian season 3, to be determined on that one, but yeah, Survivor's back soon, movie reviews, no sports talk really until UFC will happen soon. March Madness will be the next couple sports stuff. So, lot to stay tuned for on the DubCast, guys. Would appreciate if you subscribe. You can like or dislike. I don't care. I see the ratios. I know y'all out here disliking for some reason or another. So yeah, I'll leave you with that. Let me know your thoughts on Bear Season 3. And as always, be easy, y'all.